five star, man. Nobody calls Han Solo a bitch.
Bring him on. I prefer a straight fight to all this sneaking around.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
Oh, come on, bro. It's the wars.
All right, so last week we talked about a news story that we absolutely dismissed right off the bat, but apparently it requires more conversation. This is The Wars and More. I'm Joe, and of course with me is my good buddy Doug. Hey Doug, how you doing this week?
Doing pretty good, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. I can't really complain except for this.
Yeah, you say requires more conversation, but
I mean, not really from us.
right.
I think we said our piece, but
everybody else.
everybody else is like, wow, this needs to be talked about. I was like, it really don't.
Exactly. That story has gotten way more legs than it ever deserved. That's for sure.
Like, I've seen stuff from some sources like maybe we should talk about this. It's like, no,
Exactly.
not even a little bit.
Right.
Like, you realize that, like, once you open that door, even the stuff that you hold sacred is now not safe.
Right. So
It's just like, we could just do the whole Flash, multiverse thing and Flashpoint stuff. We just have alternate timelines for everything.
yes, I just want to make it clear for everyone listening that what we're talking about is this notion that they're going to retcon the whole sequel trilogy, or whatever you want to call it. That's
The Disney reset button.
yeah. Erase it from existence. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's all pretty much garbage. So, but it's being talked about everywhere, which I cannot understand for the life of me. I know there's not a lot to be talked about right now, but my God, let's all use our rational heads here.
Yeah, I mean that's let's be real. That's why we talked about it, right? There's not
Yeah.
much to talk about right now.
Yeah.
But we saw this last week as gaining some legs in, the greater Star Wars conversation, right?
Right.
And we're like, whoa. Why is this getting legs? Like,
Exactly.
doesn't make sense. And here I thought, like, rationally, everybody's going to be like, no, that's a Pandora's box we don't want to open.
Exactly.
And then I see a bunch of, maybe we should discuss this. No.
This is not a thing.
You can discuss about how bullcrappy it is, but
Exactly. It's not real. Trust me. I have no sources. Wait, hold on. I'm holding my fingers up in the air. Sources. I have none of those. But I can tell you right now, it is pure BS. So.
yeah. So I have a source.
Yeah.
Yep. The source of common sense
Yes.
says that this is bullshit.
I like it. What's funny? I believe your source.
It's pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Just say it. Pretty reliable.
Okay. Well,
He's ignored quite often, but reliable.
these days, a lot. Yes.
All right.
Yes. I think we should move on now. We
should move on. Okay, let's talk about some good stuff, right? Good
Sure.
stuff.
Sure.
Good vibes. So, video gaming. We love Star Wars video gaming. And Steam has a great deal going on right now if you like Star Wars gaming. So until July 9th, you can pick up Battlefront 2 or I should say, or Jedi Fallen Order for 50% off.
Wow. That's excellent.
That's excellent. So, not to be doing free advertising, but apparently,
Yeah, well,
But no, this is a great deal. If you like Star Wars games, and you've been waiting for the chance to jump in, at a reasonable cost, because let's be real, video games are not reasonable these days.
This is true. This is true. Well, I gotta say, it's kind of encouraging hearing this, because when you think about it, you could, I'm using ballpark figures here. You could potentially end up with both of those games, plus whenever Squadrons comes out, for around $100, all 3 games.
Yeah, I would say
Seem
that's
about
a fair
right.
assessment.
Wow, that's not bad.
Yeah, because I would assume if I'm just ballparking, Battlefront 2 is probably around $40 right now. Jedi Fallen Order, probably still $60.
Right.
So, you take those two in half, you're at $50. $49.99 for Squadrons, right?
Something like that. Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
You're right around $100 for 3 video games.
That's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
You get your Star Wars fix, I mean,
Yeah. And I've played both these games, and they're both worth the money.
right.
At 50% off, they're definitely worth the money. So if you need some Star Wars in this time of not so much Star Wars, there you go.
That's when you say you're welcome.
Yeah, I guess if I want to be an ass. Yeah, I got you.
Right.
All right. So, The Mandalorian, we've talked a lot about what we thought of Deborah Chow so far.
Oh yeah. High praise.
Huh?
High praise.
High praise. High praise. And she just keeps upping the ante on it.
Right.
Like every single time I turn around and she's talking about Star Wars and what she's doing and things like that, I like her more.
Absolutely.
Every time. So this one's going to be kind of funny, right? Like, this is going to be like a Wars and More inside joke. But at the same time, I appreciate the sentiment, right? Like, I appreciate this outlook on things.
Okay.
So she was talking about the differences between working on The Mandalorian and working on the Obi-Wan series.
Okay.
And I believe this was with the Hollywood Reporter. Make sure I put that out there.
Okay.
She says, in some ways, I'm going to miss having a team and having people are there to bounce ideas off of. But then, obviously, the flip side is, it is nice to have a coherent voice and know what you're doing from beginning to end.
Whoa. Wait a minute. Wait. If you haven't started yet, how can you possibly know how it's going to end?
I mean, this is the kind of statement, right?
Yeah.
Good point.
No, I mean, I love what I'm hearing here. This is...
I love it too, but this is the kind of statement that's going to get you fired.
Yeah, well, it could be. Yeah, it could be. But
whoa. We need a committee.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing, though. She says she loved having a team, people to be able to bounce ideas off of. Don't even don't tell me she can't call up Dave, say, "Hey, Dave, I'm thinking of doing X, and I understand it might be, a little out of the, out of the norm," and he's gonna be like, yeah, or I think we should stay away from that. Yeah. So, I mean, that can happen. We all know that can happen. So,
well, I don't think that's what she's talking about here.
I
think,
get it.
I think, yeah, we know that is still going on and very much so probably happening, whether it's Dave Filoni or just even bouncing ideas off at Ewan,
Oh, sure.
She's got those resources at her disposal. I don't think that's what she's talking about. I think she's talking more from a director's point of view, talking to other directors. What would they do in this situation?
Right. That I gotta say, from everything that we've seen with how things work behind the scenes with directing in The Mandalorian, that's kind of an unusual situation, I think. Having so many directors around, it's like, this is your show, but there's everyone else here who can kind of like help and give you their thoughts and input.
I do have to say though, like The Mandalorian is not a good example for like not having a coherent voice. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
well, ultimately, Jon Favreau's there
watched
going
every episode, and you knew you were watching the same story.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that can't be said for everything that's been going on.
No. No matter how you slice it, it cannot be said for everything else. Yes.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of, oh, you like this character? Yeah, you did.
Well, so I gotta say, it sounds to me kind of like, she is the showrunner, correct? So,
yep.
She is basically getting to experience the buck stops here point of view kind of thing, right? Almost like, here I go. That's kind of the way George ran things, right?
Right.
He brought in other directors. He brought in, people like Larry Kasdan and stuff, all that kind of stuff. But he was always final word. It's like, that's not going to work, or we're going to go this route, whatever, or let's try it both ways and then we'll pick it later, that kind of stuff.
Crap, I like my idea.
Yeah, right. but it's definitely, at the end of the day, when the whole crew's looking for an answer on something, all their heads swing to her direction. So that's kind of, and that's a good thing, she's definitely capable, and I can't wait to see what we're going to get.
Well, no, I mean, like, there's a lot of confidence in this here too, right? Like,
yeah,
to say it's nice to have a coherent voice and things like that.
Yes.
So she's embracing the role she's in.
Right. That's what's wonderful about it.
And she's obviously confident in her, Star Wars ability.
Right.
I mean, I hope she is, because we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for what she's demonstrated so far, we have every reason to be confident.
Yeah, you'd
in her.
be crazy not to be confident.
Right.
So, yeah, she gets it. In a big way.
Right.
I mean, she did a lot of good stuff. A lot of mind-blowing stuff. Action-packed. That's where, like, I'm like, oh, you picked the most, the director who had the most action-packed stuff to do Obi-Wan, which is probably going to be the least action-packed.
Yeah. From everything we're hearing, it's not going to be all lightsabers and starships. But
yeah, but I think you need that, right? Because like the action you're gonna have, you need it to stick.
Yeah.
You need it to be memorable, because there's not going to be a ton of it.
Right.
So it needs to be special. So yeah, great.
Which I will say, that what you just said right there, that's a hallmark of Star Wars. Really.
Yeah, I mean, the action is.
It's not end to end in the movie.
At all, not at all.
You pick any Star Wars movie, it's not action end to end. And what makes it so great is the large contrast there is from the dialogue heavy cerebral parts to the action sequences. So
right.
I like it. I don't know.
Yeah, and you definitely need someone that's going to make those action sequences be pivotal, like
a standout.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because while they're not the most important part of the story, you want to remember them.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it all depends on what type of moviegoer you are. Some people go just for that kind of stuff. You know, they like that stuff. It's all about big action scenes and stuff. You know, for me, I like story, you know, as a whole. So
Right.
it all plays well together, and I'm sure she's going to make it happen. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board. All right. So when I saw this story, I got like super excited, right? Super excited. Like anytime they announce a cameo, I'm like, oh, what did they do?
okay.
And so Michael Giacchino
Oh yeah.
revealed his cameo in The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh wow. Awesome.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, okay.
And normally, like, being a stormtrooper is like, normally when you have a cameo as a stormtrooper, it's a memorable stormtrooper, right?
Yeah. A lot of times, yeah.
But how many memorable Sith troopers were there?
Ooh. I don't know. There's, man, I think I blinked twice and I missed all the Sith troopers. So
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So he was a Sith trooper.
wow. Okay.
It's like, ooh, oh.
Yeah.
Like, I guess cool.
I gotta say, when I saw the armor right before the film came out, okay, you know, it's different, cool, updated, you know, whatever, all that. Let's hope they do something cool with these Sith troopers. And then the movie comes out, and it's like,
Wah, wah, wah.
were they in there? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, they were definitely a blink and you'll miss them kind of thing.
Yeah, and I doubt he's the one that, like, when, you know, Finn was rushing across the deck and, you know, the one gets blown off into space. I doubt that was Giacchino.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sure he was just one standing in line.
Yeah.
But hey, cool, he was in there.
Yeah. You know, I mean, yeah, good
But
for
yeah,
him.
like I said, I got super excited. Like, ooh, cool, cameo. Oh,
Now, what would have been really cool is if they would have had like John Williams pouring drinks and Giacchino washing the glasses, like together at the same bar. That would have been cool.
I like that better.
Yeah, me too. That's why I said it.
Yeah.
Maybe their schedules didn't line up. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, normally the like Sith troopers, you know, or Sith troopers, stormtroopers.
Yeah.
Like they had Daniel Craig in
Yeah.
The Force Awakens.
Yep.
And that one was crazy because you knew that was Daniel Craig.
Right.
You heard his voice, and it was not much mistake in that, right? Like, so that was a cameo that really stood out. But I guess it's James Bond, right?
Right.
But here you got Giacchino, who's been one of the guys that has taken up the torch.
Yeah.
The torch of literally the lifeblood of Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
The music is as important as everything that happens on film.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is one of the guys who has taken up the torch.
Yep.
So, yeah, I expected, you know, a little more.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Seeing as how John Williams had a cameo, I think it would have like been really cool to have
them together.
them together, because that would almost, you know, and we don't know who's going to be doing music moving forward, but you know, it would almost be kind of like a passing of the baton, you know.
Yeah, we don't know who's doing music going forward, but I got this sneaking suspicion that Giacchino is going to be involved.
He could be.
He's been a little too involved in Star Wars lately,
Right?
to not be in it going forward. That would just be nuts to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's neat.
It's neat. Yeah.
Love to see him still embracing it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, why wouldn't you though? It's
Yeah, exactly.
You mean I get to take up the baton from John Williams?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope that's a sign of things to come. Hey, look, he's still around.
Right.
He's not going anywhere. Don't want to see him go anywhere. So,
Exactly.
he did Rogue One, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Rogue One was fantastic.
Yes, it was.
His score. So, yeah.
Cool.
Have something to add to the conversation? Or you just want to let us know how we're doing? Email us, show@thewarsandmore.com. That's the best place to get in on the action. But if social media is a little more to your liking, @The Wars and More on Twitter is always a good place to interact with us. And we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/The Wars and More. And of course, your portal to this and everything else, The Wars and More, is thewarsandmore.com.
Well, one thing we always love to talk about in Star Wars is the technology used to make Star Wars. So I hope everybody's been keeping up with Disney Gallery, Star Wars The Mandalorian, because they've had some cool stuff.
Yes. Yes, they have. If you've been keeping up with it, then clearly you are aware that we're kind of behind in staying on top of these episodes, but it's kind of like we're just going back and taking another look kind of thing. So in the episode where they talk about the, I think it's episode 4, the volume, they do a lot of talking about this thing, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to really get a good grasp as to how this thing works a little deeper than what a lot of people realize that it is, because it is a big video screen in the round, right? But it's a little more than that too. So basically hearing what everyone has to say about it kind of gives you a taste of the awe they all have when they encounter it. It's just take a listen to Taika Waititi.
Sometimes you'd walk into that volume and you wouldn't realize where the screens were, because you'd have these sets that were built and all these people in them and characters and stuff, and it would, even to the human eye, you'd get deceived and you wouldn't quite be able to figure out where the practical stuff ended and where the LED screens began. So even to the human eye, it was believable.
Yeah. So it's like I say, it's more than just a video wall, right? So you have a sound stage that you can actually set up practical props on, and then they seem to mesh, I guess, perfectly in with this wall that has your background and everything else, your surroundings projecting around you. So
well, that's got to be pretty cool, right?
Yeah,
to have your surroundings actually projected around you. A lot of times when you're working in front of screens and things like that, you're not seeing what you're working with.
You're told,
Right.
and you're to imagine that, but you don't actually get to see it.
Well, yes. This is actually kind of like the next step forward that they have taken here, and it's really encouraging. And what is really getting me is listening to all these actors talk about how this is going to help them.
Right.
I guess we just roll into it because it kind of segues right into this next clip.
Now we have a room where there are things that you can see, where I can climb up on top of my TIE fighter and see the horizon. It's interactive. I can now feel the power of that sun coming up. There could be nothing else in the room, and now you can put a set in there with gravel and dirt and a spaceship, so I have something concrete and physical to look at and feel and touch. Wow, what a difference. What a difference a day makes.
So obviously that was Giancarlo Esposito talking about
Which,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about him.
Yeah.
How does he play this character that is so calm? Because this guy, every time we hear him talk, he is so like ramped up. Like,
I know.
He's just like psyched to talk about everything. And then you see him on screen and he's like cold.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this guy is so geeked all the time. How does he get so cold?
I don't know.
It's wild. Okay, go on. But I had to interject.
No, that's fine.
Every time we hear him, he's like, "Can you believe this? The next thing we did was like," it's like, whoa,
right?
You're the same dude I just saw on screen.
Exactly. So he's talking about again, the same thing Taika Waititi was talking about, where you have you have practical props on this soundstage, but they're surrounded by this environment, for lack of a better word, where you have your environment. I don't know, the whole set is there, but it's digital. You know what I'm saying? They can see it. It changes around them. And, it's actually being filmed as well. It allows them to actually be in the moment. They don't have to pretend that they're seeing everything that they're trying to act against.
Right. So my question is this. So given how long, high definition technology has been around, right?
Yep.
It's been a while. It just hasn't been affordable, It's been around for a while.
Yes.
What has taken everybody so long to use this idea? Like, what's so special about, because you can project stuff up on a screen and it looks awesome?
Okay. We're going to get there. We're going to get there.
I'm asking ahead, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit. I would like to play another clip talking about the volume prior to getting there. Okay.
All right.
This.
I just want to get there.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. All right. Here, let's. They're going to talk about it a little more, and kind of where this whole idea originates from.
The great irony is that George Lucas, way over 20 years ago, was saying, I was hearing him saying, he's like, one day we're going to be able to make these movies in our garage. I know it will look like just as real as traveling a zillion miles away. The first time that I stepped onto the volume, I was like, oh my gosh, this is George's garage.
When George came by the set and looked at the wall we had built, and we're so happy that I'm getting ready to tell him, We're the first people ever to do this. I mean, people talk about it, but nobody's actually done it. I'm like, you didn't have a video wall. He says, no, not a video wall.
Well, he told
but it was
me
what
that
the prequels
it's
were.
what he was building or wanting to build at the base of the hill from the ranch that he never was able to do. That's exactly what he was setting up.
He was a little bit ahead of what the technology can deliver.
Always was 10 years ahead of his time.
Once we got digital, we could actually, especially like with blue screen, we could, shoot the stuff, do it in blue screen, and do all that stuff, and then just do it later. Now you can actually do it on the set, which is even better.
So, this whole thing that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are taking full advantage of here, and John, to his credit, Jon Favreau's had a large hand in this, developing stages, I guess. But George has kind of had this idea, just not necessarily the means to implement it long ago. So,
I can just imagine George Lucas on the set just geeking out over this thing.
Oh yeah, which is what he was doing, where that quote came from. This is right up his alley.
Yeah, and to have it happening on a Star Wars project.
Yes.
He's just got to be over the moon, right?
Yes, like absolutely. Star Wars always innovates, and that's something the Mandalorian has done. Again, it's taken another leap forward. So
yeah, that's fantastic. That's
as this leap forward. Wow. Strange.
I feel like it's saying Windows is here.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about this leap forward, we're going to get there now, Joe.
Yes.
So this is where they talk about the portion of this quote unquote wall, right? The volume, and a little bit in the details of how it works and how it's using the game engine behind it.
I don't think I could sit here and explain what it is that's so fundamental about a game engine.
I'll give you my version, and then John will give you the right answer. It's real time. So the visual that anybody playing a video game are looking at are being calculated in milliseconds. So if you move right or you move left in a scene, or you turn around and you see a view in an environment that you've never seen before, it's happening in milliseconds. It's real time.
I guess for the audience to understand, it's like literally being inside the Battle of Hoth from Empire Strikes Back, but the battle is happening all around you because you've already
Well, that's like how a video game
out.
works,
Yeah.
except now we're setting cameras as though we're taking that video game reality and we're doing a cinematic experience based on it.
Then we're going to control
it. So those kids, right?
Kids?
Their parents told them that you're wasting your time with those video games. That's never going to amount to anything. They're sitting there right now like, ha!
Yes, exactly. That is exactly true, because this is how we make television now. So
that's really cool, because you think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, when they rotate a camera around in a live environment, right?
Yep.
The camera is picking up everything in real time.
Yes.
But when you're creating an environment, like you can do stuff with backdrops that are like, matte paintings, things like that.
Yeah.
You can't really move around it and get that real time feel. You're not going to get different perspectives, things like that. But if you can render that image into something like a video game image, you'll be able to move around it.
Yes. So I guess this is going to be my rudimentary explanation. Okay. But I guess what I want you to try and imagine is that, if you're familiar with how a first person shooter game works, you have your controller, which is how you maneuver, and your television screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Imagine it kind of being the opposite, right? So instead of your screen projecting at you, you have the camera, which is recording the screen. Okay.
Yep.
And the camera operator and camera are like your controller. So like you would with the controller, if you hit your D-pad left, your screen changes to show you what is in the game engine left, right? Same happens with the camera from the camera's perspective.
Okay, so the camera moving around in this space is actually what is controlling the rendering of the image on the screen?
Exactly. So let's just say we have a character on the soundstage, this whole screen behind them, and it's all round. It's almost 360 degrees around them, right? That's this whole environment they're talking about. Let's just say they're walking down a street, okay, and they cross an alleyway, going between two buildings, right? And you want the camera to pan past your character, but with the alleyway in the background. So if you're going camera motion from right to left, you would see the far left side of the alleyway. And as you pan across, it would show you down through the whole alleyway and then across to the right side of the alleyway. And that all of that is in your shot. Whereas if it was something like a matte painting, none of that would change.
Right. Your perspective would change, but the image itself would stay stationary.
Exactly.
So this is what takes your backdrop into the third dimension.
Yes.
So instead of having a two-dimensional, like, because you could put a video screen behind someone, have it static, but as the camera moves, it would stay in like that picture would seem in the second dimension.
Right.
But with that camera being like a controller that moves the orientation of the screen as well.
Yep.
You're getting that 3D perspective.
Exactly.
So it makes it feel more realistic. This is why, like, okay, yeah, it makes it seem dumb. Like, oh, wow, no one thought of using LED screens to make a backdrop.
Exactly.
But it's not that simple. Because as your camera's perspective changes, you need that scenery to at least rotate in a certain way to make it seem real.
Yep.
Because otherwise, it's just a flat surface behind you. And, okay, yeah, you move, but the perspective gets weird.
Exactly.
That's wild.
It is wild. I mean, it's genius when you think about it. When you know, and it's got, if you're still trying to grasp it and understand, it will click with you. You know what I'm saying? Something's going to happen. That's how it happened with me. To where it was like, oh, now I get what they're doing. And once you get a good grasp of what it's actually happening there, it's genius. It's why haven't we thought of this before? It's and really, you know, the technology is just now getting here to where they could do it at this scale and film it and put it out there as a real world, you know.
I guess the thing to explain here is, like, you're not like moving the camera and like the whole image is like panning around. What's happening is you're moving that camera, and as you're moving that camera, the perspective of the image behind you is changing.
Yep.
So when you are looking at an image, if you turn to the right, you know, the angles change, things like that. This is what that's doing. It's not necessarily like cycling to another portion of the surroundings. It's changing your perspective in that surrounding. So you're looking at the same, like you might be looking at a hut in the background.
Yep.
But that hut ain't going anywhere. It's staying in the shot where it's supposed to be.
Right.
But your angle of perspective is what's changing on that screen as that camera moves around.
Yes.
Otherwise, like you said, you could get away with a matte painting if you wanted it to stay two-dimensional.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that, like, here's a scene we've all seen, right? the lava boat scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that one where IG-11 sacrifices himself and all that? That whole thing was done in this. So here again, you have a situation where, they're floating through a tunnel, for lack of a better word, but all of that is being done with the volume. So
yeah, you're literally in a circular room, not actually going anywhere, but you feel like you're traveling.
And that's what the actors said. They felt like they were moving. We've all ridden Star Tours and stuff. This is kind of in the same vein, but like to the next level. So I hope I explained it pretty well, but it's just pretty amazing how, once again, Star Wars seems to make the next leap in technological advancement when it comes to making movies.
Yeah, and the main reason I wanted to get there is they're using a video game engine.
I know. It's that part is cool.
Like, that's just wild. But it makes sense when they explain it. Like,
right.
Look, it makes these renderings in just milliseconds.
Yes.
And you're actually doing, for these shots, in a lot of situations, you're actually doing less than what a video game does. Like you said, if this is the controller.
Yes.
When you hit right on a controller, like, you spin around and you see a whole scene, right?
Right.
This guy's moving to the right or left, and it's just barely changing those perspectives.
Yes.
But it's changing it, so like I said, it takes you out of that 2D state into a 3D state. Like, it's giving you that shift in your background that makes you feel like you're there. Because every angle you look at something, it looks slightly different.
Yep. Absolutely. So,
but if you look at a painting, for example, we use matte paintings because that was the old way of doing, background shots and something you couldn't be at, right?
Right.
So you use a matte painting or something like that to create your background. Well, when you move left or right with a matte painting, it doesn't really change your perspective of everything in that.
Exactly. You think about some of the famous matte painting shots in Star Wars, right? You have Return of the Jedi, Han and Lando discussing, hey, I want you to take the Falcon, are you sure? All that. The whole background right there is a matte painting, the Falcon and everything. But that shot is shot still. And then Lando takes off straight away from the camera, quote unquote, towards the Falcon. And then it cuts to Han, and it's like, there was no moving around with the camera or anything in that shot. That's the way you had to do it with that sort of thing.
Like, if you got a tree in the background, right? Like, it's just a tree. If you're looking at that tree on a 2D surface, like, even if it was just an LED screen, right?
Yep.
An LED screen behind you, and you start to move to the right, and you're looking at this tree, you're still looking at the same image of the tree.
Exactly.
You're just starting to get further to the side of it, but your perspective of the tree isn't changing. The tree doesn't look like it has any depth.
Right.
But you do this, and you have this camera changing that perspective on your background.
Yep.
Now you're moving to the right, but you're starting to see the right side of the tree.
Yeah, exactly. And the shadow of the tree on the ground would move along.
I guess you'd be seeing the left side of the tree, but
yeah,
I guess you'd actually.
However it works, yes, but yeah, that's the same sort of thing, right? As you would, if you're going around the tree in this instance, that's how it would work, if you're going around the tree to the right, the shadow of the tree might be more to the left and to the left and to the left. Kind of. I don't know. Once it clicks with you, like it clicked with me, it's like once I got it, it's like, wow, the possibilities truly are endless with what they could do with this stuff. And the only other thing I would say, the images they're using with all this, we've all seen the show and how good it is, but it's, I would say these are like, a lot crisper images than they have in a video game. Necessarily.
I wonder if that messes with your equilibrium at all, that like the cameraman's actually like changing your viewpoint. Like it's not even you. The cameraman's moving around and you're like, shit.
Right. I could see that happening. I imagine it could. I would say most of the actors though are more thrilled with the ability to actually have an environment to act inside of, as opposed to, okay, we're going to put you up in front of this big blue or green screen and
hey, look at this awesome blue wall.
Right. Yeah. Here, look at this dot on a stick. And, this is going to be the bad guy. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's wild.
Definitely wild.
Video game engine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it just wouldn't feel right lately if we got out of here without talking about Mark Hamill.
Right.
Because, for a guy who wants to get out of Star Wars, he sure is talking about it a lot lately.
He sure is. Maybe it's just due to the fact that he makes himself so accessible to the fans, and to other collaborators and, people who just want to talk about Star Wars, right? But Mark was on a show you can catch on YouTube. It's done by the Russo brothers. We all might be familiar with them, right?
Who?
You know who I'm talking about.
I just had to do it.
So
we all know who they are. I had to say who.
Yeah. It's called the Russo Brothers Pizza Film School. So,
Pizza Film School. What's that about?
Well, okay. So this is the premise of the show. They all get together online, whether it's, I don't know if it's Skype or Zoom or whatever, something like that, and they discuss movies that influence them. And while they're doing it, they have pizza from like their favorite local shop or whatever. And they give shout outs to their favorite shops and pizza shops and stuff. So kind of cool there. But
I do like pizza.
Yeah, pizza's good.
You said pizza movie. Like what?
Yeah, I know.
What does that mean?
I mean, it's literally just kind of what they're doing. And
yeah, it's literally what it is. Huh?
Yeah. So, this episode, and I think it's episode 4, the movie that they were going over is The Empire Strikes Back. And
episode 4?
Yeah, I know.
They couldn't wait one episode.
I know. Hey. I know.
I kid.
I know. So,
but seriously,
what they did do though was they brought in a special guest, and of course that guest was Mark Hamill.
Did he eat pizza?
He said he had pizza from somewhere, which I forgot, but you have to.
Okay.
This what?
These are important questions. I'm just.
Oh. Well.
Like, hey, did he have pizza?
Yeah, of course.
It was the show, right? Like.
Right. So, basically, something that I was not aware of. I kind of want to start out with this, and I'm not familiar with which brother is which here, but one of them talks about kind of how The Empire Strikes Back did influence them to some degree.
And in fact, in this particular case, Empire Strikes Back is not only one of the most important movies of our formative years, but was so important to the four of us, me, Anth, Chris, and Steve, is that it actually influenced the structure of a movie we made together called Avengers Infinity War, and led to a very prominent sort of downbeat or cliffhanger ending, very well-known cliffhanger ending from that movie. It truly owes its debt to Empire Strikes Back.
So interesting. I mean,
Empire did have the ultimate cliffhanger.
Yes.
Like everybody goes out, is he really his father?
Yeah. We had like a similar, I wouldn't say similar necessarily, but we were left wanting a whole lot more at the end of Infinity War as well. So I did not realize that they actually kind of used The Empire Strikes Back as a model for that. Kind of interesting that they did. Yeah, why not?
Because I haven't seen it.
I know. I have. Now, I can't say that I necessarily put my finger right on that, having seen it, but it's going to be interesting for me to go back and watch it now with that, through that lens. So,
well, I can tell you this, like the more and more they do this, the more and more they make me want to watch it. Because the more you compare something to Star Wars, I'm like, okay, now I got to see it.
Right. I mean, that's kind of how it works, right? I mean, Star Wars influences other things, and especially other popular things like this. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But so we should get into the Mark Hamill stuff, right? So
yeah,
he had a lot of interesting things to say, mostly anecdotal stories of back when they were making Star Wars and Empire. And,
anecdotal stories like this is why we follow Mark Hamill, right?
Right. In this one, he was talking about how he kind of admired how Harrison Ford had his own way of getting his ad-libs into the movies.
I remember Harrison saying to me, because he came up with some just great ad-libs. There's only one cockpit. He's up on a rostrum, and I'm sitting behind the rostrum in a folding chair, waiting for my turn, giving him off-camera lines. So, I got him. He goes, great kid. And he added, don't get cocky. I thought, are you kidding me? I just loved it. I admired him so much with that. And he said, well, you should learn, Mark. He said, don't go ask George, hey, George, can I say this? Just do it on camera. that was his technique.
Nice. So
ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Exactly. That's exactly
Harrison Ford's.
That's for sure. I mean, I think it's been a pretty successful model for him over the years. But yeah, it totally makes sense. It just seems like Harrison's kind of attitude about everything too,
with the way that scene is shot, right?
Yep.
It's hard to believe that he ad-libbed.
Oh, I know.
Like with how much everything was back and forth, but with the way they kind of moved the camera around, it seemed intentional.
Oh yeah.
It seemed like it was written that way.
Oh, but absolutely. And what's funny is that they do go on in this conversation to talk about how when ad libs are done as they're shooting and everyone gets that, we're going to hang on to that one. And then what they'll do is go back and they'll actually change the scripts to fit the ad lib after it's shot. So it's kind of funny that, if something is successful enough, it'll change everything moving forward. So
that's good, because I love ad lib. I love finding out that something was just the actor said it in the moment.
It's like happy accidents, right? I mean, to quote a Bob Ross,
happy little accidents.
Right.
I like it. I mean, it's just, that means the actor was just feeling it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They really
in
felt the moment. If they can do something that fits and just gels, they were really feeling that in the moment. And some of the best stuff is ad-libbed.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they just, like I said, they get in that scene, they get in character. Hey, how would my character react to this? And that was totally Han Solo.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what we know Han Solo to be now, but that was Harrison Ford helping sculpt Han Solo.
Yes.
It's funny.
And that makes sense why it was so easy for him to step back into that role after all those years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because you see now, he literally sculpted that character.
Yep.
So that character is a piece of him. So when it's like that, it's easy to come back.
Absolutely, for sure. What's funny about Harrison Ford, though, is for as much as he liked to ad lib, on screen, apparently it was off screen with the press. He was a little different. This was, Mark Hamill talking about Harrison Ford kind of coaching him and Carrie Fisher about the press.
We always called Harrison Dad, especially when we were doing press. We'd go on a TV show or we'd get interviewed by a magazine, and when it was over in the car, he'd say, Mark, I liked when you said that you were not in it for the money. We're doing it because we like what we do. Carrie, you should leave out the story about Eddie being on drugs for his facelift, all that kind of stuff. So we get like a report card from Harrison.
That is funny. I can just imagine. He's like the consummate professional, right? This is how we're going to make this and do it right? I just cracks me up.
Well, I mean, Harrison is really good at interviews.
Oh, this is true. Absolutely.
Really good. Like, even when he's like what you would think is his driest moments, it's still gold.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, he knows how to do an interview.
Right. It just cracks me up that he helps coach the other two along, I mean, which makes sense because he's kind of been through this ringer at least once, right? In American Graffiti. I know he did some other stuff, but nothing too big, not as big as American Graffiti. So, once they get around to, Star Wars, A New Hope and, Empire, he's kind of like the seasoned, professional.
Well, I mean, you think of how young Mark was at this time, how young Carrie was.
Right.
At this time, Harrison is the vet.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though his stuff was limited at that point, he's still the vet there.
Yep.
And that's the guy that's gonna take the lead a little bit and kind of try to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as they're a decent guy, right? Like,
yeah,
that's the best way to look at it. Is like, he's trying to help. Means he cares.
Yep, for sure.
So he's not one of those types that's like, yeah, it was an interview.
Yep.
So what?
Exactly. Just fulfilling my contractual duties. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's cool. That's
right. So in this next clip, I'm posing a question for you, Joe.
A question.
Well, something that we might be able to talk about a little bit here, just get our thoughts on. But basically, it's Mark talking about the lightsabers and just how George wanted them to come across.
But I like that. I was so thrilled to be finished with the sword fight because that was done over weeks and weeks on I don't know how many different sets. It was like the most physically challenging movie I've ever done. And Bob Anderson was doubling for Vader. Peter Diamond was the stunt coordinator. And to give you an example, we choreographed this one whole long sequence. And it's like dance. You have to do it over and over and over until it's ingrained in your sense memory where you're not thinking anymore. You're just doing it. George was there, not all the time, but he was sort of a presence. He came to look at what we had so far. So George looks at the whole thing and he said, the only problem is that lightsabers are really, really heavy, like Excalibur. So you can't take your hand off the handle ever. So if he had said that before we had done it, because there were moments where we spun around. I mean, you have a lot more flexibility if you don't have that rule that you have to have two hands on the hilt. Now, flash forward to when I saw the prequels, they're twirling these things around like batons. So he evolved in his thinking. But at that time, we had to go back to square one. I mean, they were basically using the same choreography of that sequence, but anytime I took my hand off or Vader took his hand off, we had to patch that up.
So, what are your thoughts on the lightsabers having to be heavy in The Empire Strikes Back?
Well,
it seems to kind of go against everything we know about them now, doesn't it?
Yes, but okay, I'm reminded of Rebels. Okay.
Yep.
So you remember when Kanan was teaching Sabine how to wield the darksaber?
Yeah.
So he was talking about lightsabers and they were conversing back and forth, just the whole, holding a lightsaber. Like she's holding it and she's like, wow, it feels really heavy.
Right.
It's heavier than I thought. And he's like, it'll become a part of you. It will get lighter with time.
Right.
And I'm like thinking about like this, as they're saying that, it's like, okay, yeah, that was George's thinking back then. It would be heavy, right?
Yep.
And Mark said, yeah, he evolved in his thinking, but he thought about that. He thought about that, like, it would get lighter with time, things like that.
Okay.
Well, I guess, Rebels wasn't him.
Huh?
Rebels wasn't him, was it?
True. True, but the prequels were. The prequels were, and we got a lot of one-handed lightsaber use and spinning and jumping and all that with lightsabers in in the prequels.
Right.
So, the same could be said there.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, what do I think about them being heavy?
I don't know. How about this? What do you think of George's take on them filming it like it was heavy in Empire, but when the prequels come around, not so much? I mean,
I think at the time of Empire, he wanted a certain type of combat.
Right.
He wanted that, strong stroke kind of sword fighting, right?
Right. Well, he mentioned Excalibur, right? Broadsword kind of.
Yeah. Two knights fighting with broadswords.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the kind of combat he wanted at that time. Maybe at the time of the prequel, and given the time period of when it came out, people are going to find that interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But at the time of the prequels, action movies are getting more and more intense. Maybe the idea maybe it's not that heavy.
Right.
Maybe you can have a little more acrobatic.
Well,
a little more martial arts kind of.
to go right along, think of when the prequels were coming out. I mean, that is the era of like, Jackie Chan kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's funny the way these movies came out, you think about Empire Strikes Back. At that point, Luke had far less experience with a lightsaber than, let's say, an Obi-Wan Kenobi in Episode 1. So, of course...
He had less experience with a lightsaber than Anakin Skywalker in Episode 2. By the time of Episode 2, Anakin Skywalker had far more training than Luke would have ever had.
Yes, absolutely. So therefore,
you're just dealing with more experience.
It's only natural that they would be able to wield a lightsaber with more ease than Luke. That's the way I see it.
And like even thinking about it like story-wise, right? Like, so Vader is in this suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's more machine now than man.
Right.
His attacks will probably be more calculated and strength-based than acrobatic.
Yeah.
So his adversaries forcing that style of combat on him as well.
True. I see what you're saying. So yeah, for Luke to defend against to parry a blow from Vader, it would take two hands on a blade for him to do that.
Yeah,
that
it
sort
would
of
take
thing.
two hands, strong base, and you wouldn't be able to go from a defensive move in a strong base, like to deflect an attack, to being off balance and things like that, because that next strong move is going to get you.
Right.
So he's going to have to fight very similar to his opponent. And I don't feel like Vader's days were much like Anakin's acrobatic days.
True.
It just wouldn't make sense if they were.
Right.
So, yeah. I think it all makes sense.
Yes, it does. When we approach it the way we just did, I like it. I just thought it was interesting that, this was actually a directive from George, that he wanted it to be kind of like slower, heavier combat, two hands on the hilt kind of stuff, something that I had not realized before. So kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, the other thing is too, like when you see that kind of, sword fighting, right?
Yep.
Every blow, every swing has the potential to be substantial.
Right.
It makes the battle somewhat more interesting from a danger perspective.
Right.
So like when it gets acrobatic, like that there's going to be lots of parries and you can get caught off guard when something lands.
Right.
But with that style of combat, like when you're both opponents are, strong, swinging heavy. When you swing heavy, when it lands, it's going to be devastating.
Right.
So there's a little more at stake with every swing in the original trilogy than there was in the prequels.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
A lighter off-balance attack is easier to parry.
Yes.
And I say easier as in, like, you need to make less contact to make that parry go away.
Right.
With a strong attack, a light parry, you're going to move right through.
Yep.
So, yeah, there was just a little more at stake with those blows in the original trilogy. Every time they swung, you felt like, if that gets through, that's going to hurt.
Right. Absolutely.
In the prequels, yeah, you knew when someone landed, it was going to be big, but you felt like it was somewhat easier to defend.
Right.
Faster, sure.
Definitely
But easier
faster.
to defend.
That faster, and the real danger in it all was just knowing that they were lightsabers, right? So lightsaber can, like, you know, take a limb off easily. That's the big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's yeah, just different methods for different times. I think the tone of the movie for the original trilogy just suited that kind of, you know, fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Totally.
And, you know, the prequels being a little more Renaissance-y, you know, things like that. You would expect the fighting to be a little more artistic. Everything was more artistic. You'd expect the fighting to be more artistic.
More civilized age, right?
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like, everything in the prequels, like you're on Naboo.
Right.
All the architecture's artistic. You're on Coruscant. Everything's got like a Renaissance-y artistic look, right?
Yep.
It would make sense that the fighting would even have an artistic kind of flair to it.
Yeah.
So martial arts, you know?
Right, totally.
Whereas in the original trilogy, everything's gritty, dark. You know, you would expect the combat to be gritty.
It's true. It's a
you know,
good thought.
swing for the fence every time.
Right. Hire this gang of furry little creatures to help you out.
Yeah. But you just didn't expect like an elegance from combat in the original trilogy, right?
Right, exactly.
In the prequel trilogy, like I said, that real Renaissance look, you expect elegance.
Yes.
The fighting really reflected the tone of the movie, the look of the movie, the sign of the times, right?
It's true. When you think about it like that, it's everything about that was, you know, you talk about Naboo, the Art Deco look of those starfighters and everything. All of that stuff, you know, the leather caps they wore in those ships, you know, whereas in the original trilogy, it's like whatever we could cobble together, that's what we're going to use. You know, it's, I don't know. You're right. It's totally different. It's you can see why they were different, and it's really interesting to think about. And
I mean, the differing styles of combat made sense for their settings.
Yeah.
I mean, some people say it's like, oh, why would you fight this way then and then move backwards with this? Well, everything moved backwards with that. They literally blasted themselves into Stone Age.
Kinda, yeah.
I mean,
all right. So from lightsaber battles, we're going to go into makeout sessions.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I know. So this is something though that Mark brought up that I was not aware of. I maybe I missed it. I don't know. Kind of talking about his thoughts on what George was planning or not or whatever for his character of Luke and Leia.
I'm not sure. I've never really grilled George about this, but when we were making Empire Strikes Back, I don't think he had decided that Leia was my sister. He wouldn't have put in all those makeout scenes. There's even one that's cut from the movie that I'd forgotten about. It's where I'm trying to tell her that I have a huge crush on her.
Leia, when I was out in that storm, I was real worried. You were worried. It got me thinking, you know.
And I'm about to make my move, and of course, who interrupts us? 3PO.
Thanks, 3PO.
That irritating presence in my life. But I don't think he would have done that if he had that all mapped out. Now, I can't be sure, because, I mean, George always said he had them all planned out, but I think he was loose enough that he could tweak them as he went along.
So, yeah, I'm just wondering. So, what do you think, Joe? Do you think, in George's mind, he knew that Luke and Leia were siblings at the time of filming Empire?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So I hope not. But
here's the thing.
I wonder.
I think, okay, let me rephrase that. I think maybe the idea might have been tossed around.
Okay.
But I don't think he was set on it.
I could see that being the case. Okay. Go ahead.
And he may have looked at it as, okay, if this is where he had possible paths out in front of himself, right? He had the whole thing mapped out, right? He knew where he wanted to go.
Right.
The little intricacies along the way were what was fluid.
Yes.
And that would be one of the things that was fluid. Whether there was one Skywalker or my bad, 2 Skywalkers or 3 Skywalkers was up in the air.
Right.
I think it was a possibility, but he saw whatever he did right there as a misdirect. So he didn't care that he was doing that, even if it went the other way. Because, okay, it was just a cinematic misdirect, right?
Okay.
But no, I don't think he was dead set on Luke and Leia being siblings at the time of Empire. Okay. I would believe him if he said the idea was in his mind.
Right.
But I don't think he was dead set on it.
There you go. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think he likes to play around with these ideas of we know he goes back and looks into history and looks into the old stories and old storytelling. And, from way back, there was a lot of this incestuous storytelling, going on. You think King Arthur type stories and stuff. But I think some of this was George had the mindset of like, let's shoot all kinds of options here and we'll put it together and we'll cut what needs to be cut to make the movie we want to make in the editing suite. Right. It's George is famously known for basically creating the movie in the editing suite. So
right.
I think it's more of a thing that he can use whatever options he wants to best fit the film. And this was obviously something that he had to have been thinking, okay, well, if they are brother and sister, that's going to be taking it a little too far. So let's get rid of that kind of thing,
Right. Right. Like, okay, a kiss out of like making one guy jealous.
Right.
They didn't know they were siblings,
exactly.
And you can tie that into she's like, I knew. I always knew.
Right.
When I kissed you, it felt like I kissed my brother.
Yes.
Turns out, holy shit, I kissed my brother.
Right.
So like it was, like I said, I think the idea was was being tossed around, but he was not dead set on it yet. Because to say George Lucas was dead set on something when he started filming is just craziness.
Exactly. I think this lends itself to what we've historically heard about George basically making the movie in the editing suite.
Right. And George was very open to, okay, now I've seen it in front of me.
Yep.
Now that I see it in front of me, I'd rather see it go this way. And he just changed it.
Yep.
It's
exactly
the way he wrote.
Yeah. Well, he wrote to accommodate for that sort of thing. Right. I mean,
which makes sense because he's writing films. He's not writing novels.
Exactly. And these aren't novel adaptations either. You know,
right.
These
He's
are his
seeing
stories.
something happen in front of him, and now that he's seen it acted out, it's like,
right.
Maybe that wasn't the way to go.
Exactly.
So yeah, okay. It was probably it was on the flow chart of possibilities for George Lucas that they were siblings, but it wasn't concrete yet.
Exactly. So cool.
Yeah. I mean, George Lucas, you know, they literally did a comic book series about the first thing he wrote for Star Wars, and it is vastly different.
Oh yeah.
From what is Star Wars.
Yep.
So yeah.
If there's one thing,
sure, he wrote it down. It changed along the way.
If there's one thing we've learned from George Lucas is that these things are constantly evolving. You know?
Moraband? Seriously?
Wow, you always take it back to that. I was talking more like
whenever it's open, I just pounce on it.
I was talking more like the special editions, you know, changes that have been made since, you know, that kind of stuff, you know. The Vader, no. You know. Anyway.
I can't help myself. It's just
I know.
Low-hanging fruit, dude. Yeah, but it's one of the beauties of George Lucas storytelling.
Right.
One, he wants to tell the story he wants to tell. And that's that.
Yeah, for sure.
And if something comes along the way to make what he wanted to tell possible, he'll reshoot, or not reshoot, but he'll go back and make changes to make it the way he wanted it.
Absolutely. And he was,
regardless on who cares, like who gets upset.
Yep. And he was clearly doing that sort of thing on a micro scale while shooting the films in the first place. You know?
Right. As technology becomes available, as the story develops, it didn't matter.
That's right.
Yeah, he was just set out to tell the best story possible, and if it went a certain way, he would adapt a certain way.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you think about it, the story literally unfolded.
Exactly.
As he was shooting it.
As they're shooting it. That's kind of how it goes, yeah.
So, yeah, but that's good, right? Like,
it is.
I mean, writing something on paper and then putting it on screen is two different things. And to be willing to make, you know, adaptations to your story because when you saw it on screen, it didn't gel with what your vision was. Hey, that's admirable. And it takes guts, right?
Right.
Because it's not an easy thing to do to go, well, I didn't like that. Let's do it again. But let's do this instead.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Bottom line. Yeah, I think he did have that as a mapped out possibility, but knew he was not set on that at that point.
Right.
So he told the truth, but it was a version of the truth.
Right.
All right. I think that's all we got, right?
I do believe that's it.
All right. Well, if you have anything to add, you can always email us, show@thewarsandmore.com. It's the best way to get a hold of us. We're also on social media, though. We're at The Wars and More on Twitter, facebook.com/thewarsandmore. You can find all that and all the ways to find the show over at thewarsandmore.com. Any final thoughts this week, Doug?
No, I think that about covers it.
All right. We will talk next week.